Hello, and welcome to the 7th Ghostlight Tour of the Smith Opera House in Geneva, New York. Since you can't come to the Smith right now for our history tours, we'll bring the history to you. I'm Chris Woodworth, and I'll be your tour guide. I want to take a moment to thank Grady Hollister and Austin Jennings, who contributed a portion of the research for this week's episode. So without further ado, here's Episode 7, Shine On. Steelworker Mike White had spent most of his life walking steel girders hundreds of feet in the air. In July 1930, as he worked on the massive renovation of the Smith Opera House, he had been amazing onlookers all day by his feats of walking along the narrow wooden beams holding up the remnants of the brick wall now being demolished. And then he fell. White was working for the Smith and Caffrey Company of Syracuse when he sustained his injury. Luckily for him, and for all watching, it was a girder laying on the ground in an alley that proved to be too much of a match for the seasoned steelworker. The Ithaca Journal reported that he slipped off the girder and fell a distance of about 3 feet and broke his arm. When the Smith opened for the first time in 1894, its interior reflected the grand opera houses of Europe, with tiered seating and boxes alongside the stage. Although we don't know much about Leon Lempert and Son, the firm responsible for the original interior, we do know that they designed dozens of theaters throughout the Northeast. When the Opera House was first opened in 1894, 8 years passed before its first touch-ups. The August 26, 1902 issue of the Geneva Advertiser Gazette noted that the Smith Opera House is being brightened up with fresh paint and gilding. The old work put on by the Fairfax brothers has worn well, not a thing having been done to the interior since the opening night. At one point in 1910, some advocated that the Opera House block would be the ideal location for Geneva's City Hall. Luckily, that plan did not gain enough traction for any changes to be made at that time. In 1927, however, big changes were on the way. The Opera House wasn't just getting brightened up, this time, it was getting shined. Schine Enterprises purchased the Smith in 1927, and soon plans were in the works to remodel the Opera House. Schine Enterprises was a large movie house chain based in Gloversville, New York. It was created by two brothers, J. Meyer and Louis W. Schine. Their organization owned theaters across a large territory, including Ohio, Kentucky, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and most of central New York. The renovation took place over almost 2 years. The Democrat and Chronicle noted that Geneva's leading place of amusement was to be transformed into a motion picture and vaudeville house. Originally, the plans indicated enlarging of the house by the removal of the present foyer and extending the main floor back to the present office building in front. The extension afforded would give several hundred additional seats. Some of those plans had to later be modified because the new gallery seating could not actually see the stage. This resulted in the removal of the original roof and a subsequent replacement. The majority of the original structures were demolished, with the exception of the facade, the rear wall, and portions of the side walls. If you look closely at the back exterior wall of the Smith today, you can see where the original brickwork has survived. One of the key elements of the renovation involved raising the roof over the stage. You can tell from the seams how much shorter the original walls would have been. When the theater reopened in March 1931, the original 2 separate buildings had been combined into one. The theater was renamed Schine's Geneva Theater, a name it held onto for several decades. And what are all those bricked-up windows on the back wall, you may ask? For any local performer that has appeared on the Smith stage, the dressing rooms in the basement are, shall we say, cozy. Comprised of 6 small rooms, some of which were repurposed from storage or equipment rooms, the dressing rooms are snug. We can thank Schine Enterprises for the tiny spaces. When the Opera House was first constructed in 1894, the entire back wall featured several floors of dressing rooms. They were all removed in the demolition in 1930. If you look at the rear exterior wall of the building, seen from Castle Street, you can see all of the bricked-up windows, revealing just how much space was once there. The plethora of dressing rooms were necessary because in the early days of the Opera House, national tours often featured enormous casts. For example, an April 1902 performance of the musical comedy Florodora boasted a cast of 100. With an ensemble that large, it was probably still pretty close quarters. Luckily, our basement dressing rooms received a facelift of their own last year, and they look quite spiffy. One of the vexing questions when exploring the Smith's history is, who built it? We know the names of the major funders of the Smith, as well as the designers who created the original plans for the 1894 structure. But who were the contractors, artisans, craftspeople who toiled daily to bring the original buildings to life on Seneca Street in just over 5 months? We are still looking for answers, and we may never find them when it comes to the original 19th century construction. However, the renovation of the Smith Opera House into Schine's Geneva Theatre reveals more of the labor involved behind the scenes. Who else was toiling with Mike White before he took his tumble? Tune in next week when we try to answer the question, who built it? For more information on the history of the Smith Opera House, please visit our history blog, which can be found on our website, thesmith.org. You can also learn how to become a member of the Smith and how to make a donation. We'll see you next time for another ghost-like glimpse of the history of the Smith.